Shane Berry will now share our confirming words.
For what will it profit you to gain the whole world and forfeit your life? Indeed, what can you give in return for your life? Taken from Gospel of Mark 8:36-37. What is most precious can't be taken from you. What is most worth seeking, you already have. You are not a fortress. You are a soul. Don't be a thing. Be a living being. Live in your own life, not this other stuff. What will you let go of in order to be truly alive? When you live in loving kindness, you trade your whole world for a greater one. The heart is bigger than the rest of the world.
Now Jack Thornton, another member of our confirmation class, will do a drama, taking on the role of Matthew, the tax collector.
My name is Matthew. I know what it's like to be hated. Everyone hated me. I hated me. I can't blame them. Imagine a Jew like me working for the Romans, collecting their hated taxes, gouging my own people. I would push them to a breaking point. And then I would demand more, and I'd always get it. I didn't need them. I had enough money and power to buy new friends. And so I did. I met them while I was sitting at my tax collector's table, the scene of my crime. I had heard a little bit about him, but I didn't know much, and I really didn't care about him, but he cared about me. He stopped right in front of me, looked me in the eye, and said simply, "Come follow me." It wasn't so much what he said, but how he said it, and the way he looked at me. He loved me, all of me, even that abandoned outcast, that part I had given up long ago, and I didn't even know it was there. He brought the best part of me back to life. I found myself standing up. I don't know how, and then I chose to follow him. And that decision has made all the difference. Not that my life is easy now. On the contrary, it's quite dangerous, but I am far richer than ever was before. You know, when I first heard him tell the parable of the prodigal son, of this reckless young man caught up in money and who always gets welcomed back, I knew he was telling my story. Now, I can welcome other outcasts because this outcast has been redeemed. I can even love those scribes who follow Jesus around and try to trap him with their questions and torment, but I sure hope they will really hear and decide to follow him. You know, he's going to be here soon, and one thing I can assure you, he will find a way to ask each of you to come and follow him too. Let him love that abandoned part of yourself, that part you may have given up on. Let him give you the best part of your life back. Because when I look back at what I was, what I am now, I wouldn't trade this. I wouldn't trade this for all the money in the world.
We started something last year. We have our annual Martin Luther King service, and we take an offering. And the offering goes to provide scholarships for high school students who are selected by the administration there to go away to a week at camp where they learn about making a difference. They learn about social justice. They learn about the philosophy, nonviolent change of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And we had one of the recipients of the scholarship speak to us last year. And we were taken with this because it really made the message more personal. So today we're very fortunate to have two recipients of the scholarship who went away to camp last year. And I'd like to welcome Michaela Fonseca, did I say that right? And Gavin Thill, who are going to tell us about what it was like, why they're glad they went, and why they hope you will contribute to the cause. Come on up.
Good morning. So my name's Gavin,
I'm Michaela.
and last year we went to the YWCA In It Initiative program. So it was a week-long summer vacation at Hofstra College, and it was probably the most vigorous thing we've ever done in our lives. We were up till 2 in the morning talking about everything that we learned that day. And each day it was 2 workshops a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And I've never seen so many tears. I've never seen so many laughs. I've never seen so much happiness. And the rooms were just full of emotion. And it was heartwarming to meet 50 new people that we'd never met before. And they became our best friends, and it was so much fun.
It was a really good experience. It's just so crazy to just go to a program for a week and just get to know so many people so well, and to feel like they're your own family.
We did.
I just want to add. I told them if they spoke too long, we had a hook. But I'm not doing that. I was just joking. But I'd also like if you could just share something before you finish about how your life has changed by having gone.
Sure. My life has changed from before and after. My eyes were just opened a lot wider than they were. You see the world differently. You see that not only is race something that goes on, it's also sexuality, gender, religion. It's just everything has a factor into social justice. And it was so crazy to hear personal stories of people have their fear of the world. And I was like, wow, I never knew that people could be afraid like that. I always thought it was this way. But now it's not only this way, it's this way and that way. And it was very personal, and it was they really exposed you to these different experiences firsthand, and they kind of put you in their shoes, basically.
This program changed me personally because I felt like I was the only person who felt a certain way. And after going to this program, I noticed that I'm not the only person who feels this way, but there's also so many other people that feels that way too. And it opens your eyes to so many new experiences, and it teaches you a lot of new things.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What a wave must be. I never spoke with God, nor visited in heaven, yet
In Roger Kamenetz's book, The Jew in the Lotus, we hear of how the Dalai Lama, well over a decade ago now, invited a wide variety of Jewish leaders to come to his place in India where he lives in exile so that he might consult with them. Because, he said, you have endured a Holocaust and we are facing one of our own. Because since 1959, the Chinese have been systemically trying to destroy us, and we have a dilemma. If we fight back, weapon with weapon, we will violate our core principles. But if we do not fight back, I fear that we will cease to exist in Tibet. What would you say? Tough assignment, isn't it? Tough question. In the process of going over there, these Jews from America were struck by the variety of Westerners who were over in that area of India, of Jewish and Christian background. They had emigrated there to the East and were now seeking to become Buddhist in their orientation, learning their forms of prayer meditation. Many of the Jewish visitors were fascinated by these converts, but the Dalai Lama was clear. He said, I'm not interested in having people from the West come here and become converted to Buddhism. I'm more interested in you going home and trying to be the best Jew, the best Christian you can be. Now that's interesting, isn't it? All of this raises a host of questions for Jews and Christians who have historically had a much more rigid and less open attitude toward other faiths. While the theologies of Jews, Christians, and Buddhists, and we should include Muslims, are quite distinct in many areas, there are also places where we are tantalizingly close and we can feed each other. It was interesting, there was a big conclave and gathering of the Catholic Church monks and Buddhist monks and their hierarchies, their leaders. And it turned out that the monks on both sides really related well together. They could pray together, they entered the same space together, but the hierarchies couldn't agree on anything. They just couldn't, oh no, that we can't go along with that. That violates our dogma. And so interesting, isn't it, that when the people who spent time in meditation and prayer, they found it easier. The tantalizing closeness of what we were experiencing brought us close together. But it was also interesting because the Jewish guests represented a spectrum of Jewish leadership and perspectives. You had an ultra-Orthodox rabbi from Brooklyn, and you had a woman rabbi that the ultra-Orthodox couldn't even be in the same prayer circle with. And that was just among the Jews. What to do? As one of the Jewish rabbis on the trip said, what we are doing is trying to get down to the active ingredients of our faith. I like that phrase, the active ingredients. I'm not a baker. I cook, with the box and put in what I'm supposed to. But you'll notice the active ingredients in medication or certain recipes, make it rise or make it do this. The active ingredients indicate that something is more important going on here. It's deeper than our differences, and we need to pay heed. In today's passage, Jesus has a most incredible encounter with a woman we only know as a Syrophoenician. We might miss the significance of this with a casual reading, but many of Jesus' hearers and who read this account later would not have missed it at all. They would have gotten it right away. You see, she's a Gentile. She's a Canaanite. It was not at all proper for a Jewish man to speak to any woman in public except his wife. And to speak to a foreigner, a known Gentile, was really frowned upon. But here is Jesus dialoguing with her about healing. She asks him to heal her daughter, who is possessed of an evil spirit. Now, we talk about Jesus and his relationship to her. I'm interested in her, too. Here she comes to someone outside of her faith tradition because she recognized something in him, I'm guessing, that he was in touch with the depths, the active ingredients. I would imagine you couldn't be in his presence and not feel that. Now, the passage gets even more controversial because Jesus sounds here so very much out of character. It's shocking to hear him say, I came for the children of Israel. I didn't come to feed the dogs. And that was a derogatory term. But then the woman comes back with this witty response, yes, but even the dogs get to eat the crumbs that fall from the table. And Jesus is delighted by her response because she sees deeply into the meaning of things. And he says, for saying this, you will go home happy. Your daughter is healed. And she was. What makes this passage so noteworthy is the fact that Jesus eventually responds with empathy toward a foreigner in a culture that would clearly not have approved. So in order to respond with compassion, often causes us to have to go against the grain of public propriety. He said, in effect, that the essence of God has much more to do with compassion than rules and old grudges and enmities. This unnamed woman teaches Jesus something about the universality of these active ingredients. God's love even encompasses her. Isn't that something? A Dutch rabbi, Avraham Sotendorp, gave the following testimony. He said, I am a survivor child of the Holocaust. My birth and the circumstances of my survival have forever determined my commitment to interfaith dialogue. And he told the story about his Jewish family in Germany in the late 30s, early 40s, and how the news came that they were on the list to be taken away. Just before the Gestapo arrived, a pious Catholic family, he said, took me into their arms. I was an infant. They hid me, they raised me, they saved me. So I am, you see, forever committed to interfaith dialogue. We need each other. Your faith is indispensable to my own. Now, did you notice that despite being raised by Catholics, he became a rabbi? It sounds to me like they raised him in the tradition in which he was to have been raised, in his home tradition. These good Catholic folk honored his roots. They too knew something about these active ingredients. They were saying, in effect, that God's love is greater and more encompassing than any single tradition. Very interesting. Do you realize that probably none of us would have passed the litmus test of our early Puritan forebears? We would probably all have been disfellowshipped and booted out as heretics, because we would not be seen as devout enough, as pure enough in terms of our stated doctrine or our behavior. We're too casual. For example, when was the last time you used the word heretic? Their uncommon devotion and desire to be pure also led them, to our horror now, to celebrate the death of the native Indians from smallpox and warfare. They saw it as a clear sign of God's will because they were God's chosen people and God was just clearing the way for them to thrive. No sense of culpability, no sense of guilt at all. That's a very dangerous conclusion to come to, especially if you're part of the group that's been rejected. History tells us what happens in glaring detail. In their intense devotion to God in their minds, they missed some of the active ingredients that should have tempered their zeal. It's not easy to be in touch with the active ingredients. We are in a strange time, perhaps, in religious history. We mainline Protestants seem to have little to really fight about with each other, but that wasn't always the case. And we wonder what all that fuss was about back then. Theologically, we tend to be quite tolerant because we have such a hard time defining what we really believe about God in Jesus Christ. And that could be a mixed blessing. It's great to be open. There's no more inquisitions or religious warfare, at least that I know of among mainline Protestants in this country. But we are usually so open and flexible that we offend nobody. That's almost part of our understanding of ourselves as people of faith. Don't offend, don't judge, don't take a stand that's too controversial. There was nothing fuzzy or wishy-washy about Jesus. in his application of his faith. Embodying compassion is never weak. He heals the child of a foreign woman, even though his tradition had taught him that she was hopelessly inferior. At that moment, he chose to leave that distortion behind forever. What a wonderful passage to have included. When I hear people talk about how excited they get at one of Fred's classes, it's the same kind of dynamic. Energy is being released. People are getting in touch with deep stuff. They're getting in touch with the active ingredients of our faith. And it's almost like, I never knew that. Fred's revealed this to me, and I feel more alive. I feel more the sense of God's presence. That's what our goal and job is, as a church, as individuals, to release that energy. I think God is calling us to dig into the active ingredients of the Jewish faith, the Muslim faith, and for us Protestants, into the Roman Catholic faith or tradition. I don't think it's a mystery that Pope Francis has suddenly become so newsworthy. People of all faiths are responding to him with enthusiasm. The man is clearly seeking to embody the active ingredients of the Christian faith, the deepest roots of our tradition, but in so doing, he's able to speak in a more universal and all-encompassing language. He reminds us of the founder of his order, St. Francis, who had the ability to cut through a lot of the structure and touch the heart. And St. Francis reminds us of Jesus himself. Compassion has a way of communicating. It cannot be stopped. Putting love before rigid doctrine strikes us as a breath of fresh air, but it's not new. Jesus did the same thing long ago. But over the centuries, several of our Christian traditions got off track. We thought we knew better. We didn't. Pope Francis welcomed a Muslim woman to the foot-washing ceremony last Maundy Thursday, and it became headline news, while many in the Vatican grumbled. He gives hope to so many because they know he's grounded in compassion more than dogma, and he's in good company. Jesus loved the truth, no matter how inconvenient it was, and it often got him into trouble. He offended people, but for the right reasons. George Blow, op-ed columnist in the New York Times, tells of how reading as a young boy, his mother gave each of the kids some money and brought him to a store, and his siblings ran to the toy part of the store. He went to the book part, and he bought some books, and it changed his life. He quotes James Baldwin. You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me the most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive and all the people who had ever lived. Now, isn't that ironic? Baldwin is well known for his ability to go deeply into the pain and joy of life. The deeper he went, the less estranged he felt, and the more universal his appeal. Don't forget that. Mr. Blow concludes, there is no intellectual equivalent to allowing oneself the time and space to get lost in another person's mind. I suspect all of us have had that experience, whether it was high school, first time you read a book by a famous author, and a whole new world opened up, maybe in college, but whatever. The world was different after we read and heard in their own voice somebody who was well known for touching the depths of life. We find ourselves when we get deeply connected to someone else's mind and heart. Jesus came that we might get lost in each other's hearts and minds, and ultimately in the heart and mind of God. Don't settle for going through the motions with your faith or your life. Dig into the depths. That's where you'll find those active ingredients. After all, Jesus is the one who said, when I'm lost, then I am found. Amen.